All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into one of the most debated, most mysterious timelines in all of biblical prophecy, the 2300 days. It's a real enigma that has had scholars scratching their heads for centuries, and we're going to break down one critical analysis of all the evidence. Okay, so it all kicks off with this one line, a really cryptic verse from the book of Daniel. You get a very specific number of days, and then this huge, monumental event, the cleansing of the sanctuary. But what on earth does that actually mean? And that is the central mystery, isn't it? That's the question driving our entire investigation today. We're going to follow the logic that our source material lays out, see if we can narrow down the suspects, and really understand the problems each theory runs into. So, our investigation starts with the first major theory on the table. Does this 2300-day countdown begin during that final apocalyptic 7-year period that so many other prophecies focus on? Let's find out if the timeline even adds up. Now hold on, before we get any further, you gotta understand two key ideas from Daniel that basically act as the master clock for all this prophecy stuff. You have the 70 weeks prophecy, which lays out this grand timeline, and then you've got the final week, that dramatic 7-year finale. Think of these as the official timeline we have to measure everything else against. And right away, this first theory hits a massive roadblock. If you try to start the 2300-day clock halfway through that final 7-year period, well, the math just creates a huge problem. You end up with this weird 1040-day overflow that extends past the supposed end of everything else. According to our source's author, this timing conflict just makes the whole theory fall apart. So, the bottom line is, this theory creates a flat-out contradiction. The timelines clash, and for the author of our source material, that's enough. Case dismissed. We have to look somewhere else. Okay, so with that first theory off the table, we turn to the prime suspect in our investigation, the day-for-year principle. This is, without a doubt, the most influential and the most controversial way people have tried to interpret these 2300 days. The idea itself is pretty simple, but whoa, the implications are huge. It suggests that each of the 2300 days isn't talking about a 24-hour period, but one full calendar year. This completely transforms the prophecy from something lasting about 6 years into an epic timeline that stretches across 2 millennia. And that, right there, brings up the million-dollar question for this series. If we're really talking about a 2300-year timeline, then everything, I mean everything, depends on finding the correct start date. If you get the start date wrong, the end date is completely meaningless. Okay, so our source material rolls up its sleeves and starts digging into the 4 main candidates for this all-important start date. We're going to follow the evidence for each one, treating them like separate case files in this big prophetic investigation. First up, case file number 1. This is the most straightforward idea. What if the countdown simply began the moment Daniel actually received the vision? It's a direct approach, so let's run the numbers. The vision happens during the reign of King Belshazzar, which puts us around 553 BC. You add 2,300 years to that, and boom, you land right in the middle of the 18th century, around the year 1748. But here's the giant red flag. The prophecy talks about a cleansing of the sanctuary. That sounds like a world-changing event, right? Well, when you look at the year 1748, crickets. Nothing. No major event fits the description. So for our author, this one's a dead end. All right, let's open the next case file. Another interpretation says the clock should start at a key event mentioned in the prophecy itself, the moment the sacred temple sacrifices were stopped or the temple was desecrated. Now, this approach actually gives us 3 different potential start dates. But the problem is, each one spits out an end date, 1713, 2134, or 2370, that our source argues just doesn't line up with any clear, significant prophetic fulfillment. It's just more dead ends. Okay, let's try a totally different tactic here. What if we flip the whole thing around? Instead of guessing a start date, let's assume the 2300-year prophecy ends at the same time as that grand 70 weeks prophecy. If we think we know the end, we can work backward to find the beginning. So using a hypothetical end date, let's just say around 2037, and then subtracting 2300 years from that, our source calculates a potential start date of 264 BC. So the big question is, does this date hold up to scrutiny? And nope, we hit another wall. The prophecy in Daniel 8 starts in a context of intense trial and persecution, But if you look at the history of 264 BC, Israel was actually in a period of relative peace under the Ptolemaic dynasty. The history just doesn't match the prophecy. This brings us to our final and probably the most famous theory of them all. This one connects the start of our 2,300 years to the exact same event that kicks off the 70 weeks prophecy, the famous decree to rebuild Jerusalem. So this decree was given by King Artaxerxes, and it's dated to around 458 BC. You add 2,300 years to that, and you land on a very specific year that's been hugely significant for many prophetic movements, 1843. But the author's conclusion here is blunt. The prophecy describes the end of sin, the end of persecution, a total cleansing of the sanctuary. And in the year 1843, none of that happened. The world kept turning, sin continued, history moved on. The results just didn't match the prediction. So, after following every major lead, after testing every primary theory for this day-for-year idea, our investigation has basically hit a dead end. Every single path we've taken has led to some kind of inconsistency or contradiction. And here's the final verdict from our source. The day-for-year principle, as compelling and popular as it is ultimately seen as just unworkable. The analysis concludes the start dates are too speculative, the end dates don't match up with real history, and the whole thing requires forcing connections that just aren't really there in the text itself. And all of this leaves us with a much, much bigger question, doesn't it? After all this investigation, if the numbers don't add up and the theories keep falling apart, well, maybe the point isn't just about cracking a code or getting the math right. Maybe, just maybe, it's about asking if we're even approaching prophecy in the right way to begin with.